I have a good real-life friend who won't watch my videos because of these beauties right here. Today we're going to be kicking off a new series featuring replays from the BBB clan tournament. It's a Swiss-style tournament where matches are played each week offline, and there's a bunch of replays with the big kind of final tournament at the end. There's a good cash prize as well. I forget, I think it's like 300 euros at least. Yeah, and it's being hosted, of course, by the BBB clan. As this unfolds, I'm going to start to develop a new series. We'll kind of see how it goes, but basically, in order to cast a full best of 5, instead of showing all the games in a given series, I'm going to show you only the best games of each series and just give you a quick recap of the other games. So, in this best of 5, we've got Blanquiverde versus General Eisenbart, which should be a very good time. Blanquiverde, of course, coming in here with the Greenskins initially. This is game 1 between these two, and I figured that the appropriate response for my friend for the Arachnarok Spider would be these Iron Drakes for the Dwarfs. So let's take a look at the builds. Besides those two units, of course, Dance and Warzag leading the way is a win in my heart. Absolute dub for sure. We've also got Goblin Big Bosses here. One, I think, yep, just that. Plenty of Black Orcs as well for armor piercing. Some Goblins, Goblobbers in the back, or Goblin Rock Lobbers, that is. And regular goblins up front. Got some fanatics as well for some nice armor piercing AoE damage. The fanatics do take some time to charge up in melee, though. Oftentimes goblins low leadership means they won't get very many uses out of it. But then on the far side, it looks like some pump wagons and squig herds. Then for the dwarfs, leading the way, Thoric, Ironbrow, of course, in the center. And then, yeah, 3 Iron Drakes. We've also got a cannon here, a unit of Slayers, some Dwarf Warriors, Miners up front, some with blasting charges, some without, and then some more Slayers here hidden in the woods. So things are going to get underway rather slowly here, but the Ragnarok Spider comes forward, and although the Iron Drakes aren't known for their armor piercing necessarily, certainly the Trollhammer Torpedo variant are much more effective against large armored targets especially. But of course, one solution to spiders, as mentioned, is to just burn them with fire, and even with the sort of quote-unquote non-armor piercing status, the DPS will be high enough, especially when combined with the cannons and everything else. Absolutely brutal. This spider is going to take a lot of damage initially, although I must say that does mean that these goblins are not going to take as much. One unit of goblins certainly there just gets blasted to pieces by charges. But then the rest of these goblins are going to be able to get into combat, like this one here. Great job getting into that unit of miners, basically preventing them from using their charges at all. This unit does get their charges off, but gets some nice fanatics in response. Not too great there. The RNG pathing sort of takes them away, unfortunately, but like here, this unit of miners gets out of position and gets fully enveloped by angry greenskins. Also got these pump wagons moving in. They don't cost too much, only 450. Ooh, looks like we have a nice little foot of Gork there as well. Didn't do too much damage, actually. I probably did number on those words. Dragonfire Pass right there. Pump wagons take some damage from the charges, but not so much. It's actually kind of nice to use them to eat the charges there. Even, you know, goblins, as cheap as they are, you don't necessarily wanting them getting absolutely exploded, where the unit will just route, like the pump wagons can take it, come in, deal some armor-piercing damage, as can the squigs in melee, doing a great job getting in, disrupting, getting on these iron breakers and preventing them from shooting too much more. A couple of fire and flames being unleashed there. And of course, gyros up in the sky, a few steam guns, don't know if I mentioned them, but they're also here firing at various high-value targets, or medium-value targets. There's not actually a lot of strictly high-value targets, besides maybe Warzag himself. Black Orcs also are going to be pretty threatening. I can tell you right now that from this build perspective that the Dwarfs don't have the greatest answers for the Black Orcs. Again, Trollhammer Torpedoes arguably would be better, although it's tough to say. The explosion damage of Fire Drakes will keep the health bars up, so you can see here. It's decent. I mean, it does definitely do some damage against the Black Orcs. The trouble is, can the Iron Drake stay ahead of the Black Orcs and everything else? Right now, yeah, Blanquiverde, I believe it is the Greenskins player, is doing a great job of committing to trying to keep them tied up as much as possible. A little bit of overblobbing right here. Great opportunity to shoot in some flames or maybe go for a quick bombing run try and get, especially, again, the Black Orcs with the bombs. But WARZAG, arguably overextending a little bit here, gets caught in the center of Slayers. Slayers, of course, going to get roasted by friendly fire in this, but WARZAG also, with his low armor, is taking significant damage here from the high DPS of the Slayers and from the Iron Drakes as well. Another Foot of Gork is going to be unleashed there, doing some nice damage to those miners, but they are just miners at the end of the day. Again, maybe should have just used that to detonate the Slayers all around him to try and free himself. But overall, Battlefield's looking pretty solid. Another WA being popped there. The Black Orcs continuing to grind down plenty of Dwarfs. Whereas Dragonfire Pass just about done. One unit of Iron Drakes is pretty much finished. And if we check in here, another one is quite low. The Pump Wagons sticking along for quite some time. I know certain people are huge fans of the Pump Wagons. It's not a unit that I've highlighted too much in the past in Immortal Empires, but definitely one you should be taking at least one or two of in Greenskins for certain situations. Lappas are surprisingly good against cavalry, and then this cheap one is just really nice armor-piercing disruption against Dwarfs. But a couple of charges coming in from the side there, blasting those gobos. Trouble is that the Dwarfs are running out of ammunition. You can see the gyros have used up almost all of their steam gun ammo. And, I mean, Thorek's still quite healthy. He can definitely do some damage over time. Might be able to administer a beatdown on that Night Gobbo. But the Iron Drakes are continuing to take damage. Again, the Squig Herd's being thrown in. Spider does come back from route very critically and is able to provide a little bit of terror here in the mid to late game. So the Iron Drakes at this point just don't have anything to protect them from the Black Orcs. They could try and kite here, and they probably should, to be honest, but Dwarfs have a lot to manage right now, and it looks like Micro might have slipped momentarily. All it takes is a little bit of time. Iron Drakes really don't have much HP at the end of the day. So even getting them caught for a short amount of time, they'll take significant damage. Things are looking pretty solid for the Greenskins right now, despite the fact that WARZAG is being routed off the field. He hasn't been killed yet, which is very important. Not going to be affecting the Greenskins' leadership as much. Nice Fanatics cast, too, in this late game here, going after those Slayers. Ooh, looks like they took a wrong turn. Did not touch those Iron Drakes. A little bit unfortunate, but the Gobbos can get through. Try and run down those Slayers. Trade very cost-effectively fighting with them, as will these Black Orcs. But still got some healthy-ish Dwarf Warriors coming back. Must have been on a journey there to go take out the Goblin Artillery. Arguably overchasing a little bit. Same with these Miners. Probably want to try and stay tight to Thorek as much as possible. Didn't really check Thorek's spell loadout, but let's go ahead and take a look here. So Rune of Slowness is awesome. Rune of Wrath and Ruin, also quite nice to have. Rune of Doom. Okay, so he does not have Rune of Speed. Personally, I would have liked to have seen Rune of Speed here. If, you know, nothing else than to juice the melee attack on anything really that has armor piercing. Like, even these Miners, you might not think about it, but 20 melee attack, what is it, 26 from Rune of Speed would also be decent enough melee attack to get past the 32 melee defense of Black Orcs and be able to at least get some armor piercing, even though their weapon strength is fairly low. And just in general, that melee attack, because Dwarfs tend to have pretty low melee defense, I'm a huge fan of it personally, but Rune of Wrath and Ruin is also very solid, can deal some nice armor piercing damage. I don't think I've seen it used yet necessarily, but it could help out against these Dwarfs, for these Dwarfs in the late game against the Black Orcs as things go on. But it looks like WARZAG manages to come back from route. Speaking of spells, of course, WARZAG, anytime he casts, it's a map-wide melee attack buff if he actually brought it. Did he not bring it? Interesting. Yeah, I guess maybe he did not bring the thing, the Bonewood Staff. Seems like a mistake, to be honest, but anyway. I guess maybe if he was looking for more Foots of Gork, you know, trying to get these more expensive spells cast for a bigger burst of damage, might not get as much efficiency out of Bonewood Staff, but even still, just with Brain Burst, I don't know. It's an interesting build, but right now it's doing just fine. He's certainly been able to overwhelm the majority of the Dwarfs, and the Spider, despite its rough time, manages to stick around. So players will make their final stand, of course. Thorek fighting out in the distance. He's been grinding down the Black Orcs quite well. He's probably got a decent amount of value, but Effigy to get, gonna freeze him in place. magic resistance, or spell resistance rather, will shrug off the majority of that damage there. I mean, he's just got all the resistance types, to be honest. 25% physical. So, I mean, those black orcs even still are struggling to get through, but they are dealing little chunks of damage there. You can see a little, you know, 30 damage there, 40 damage there, depending on the armor roll. Black orcs, let's see here, 36 armor piercing damage, fairly solid, which will then, of course, get hit by the physical resistance. But anyway, let's fast forward as the Greenskins clean up the last of the Dowie. Like, Thorek actually does route that unit of Black Orcs off, but the Black Orcs themselves are just so healthy at this point. It's tough for the Dwarfs to try and take them out, and they're going to hit army losses instead. So very well played to both players. Honestly, it's going to be a great series. You guys are definitely in for a treat. We'll go over this, and then we'll get to a quick recap of Game 2. So, for, yeah, Black Orcs, they were ultimately what carried this build at the end of the day for the Greenskins. Spider was a great distraction piece initially to allow them to get in without taking a lot of damage. Again, the Iron Drakes are a nice touch. I definitely like them in this matchup. They didn't have the armor piercing or burst damage needed to get through the Black Orcs, though. And some of the other range tools like this cannon, does okay. The Slayers are always a good choice to have, but then the low-tier Dwarf Infantry just kind of struggles greatly. Even the blasting charges, which you would hope for a little more value on given their offensive power with the charges themselves, don't do incredibly well. So it's interesting. I'm not a dwarf expert by any means. It's hard for me to really comment too much on this matchup, but it was certainly a fun one to watch. I enjoyed watching that Spider get roasted initially, and then the Black Orcs sort of just mopping up in the late game. Great performance on some Night Goblins too. 158 kills, 900 damage value there. Love to see some pump wagon action also. Overall, great job to the Greenskins in a classic matchup. In Game 2, Blank Viverde's Empire got into an Old West shootout with General Eisenbart's Khalida and Double Bone Giant. But the Bony Boys brought but big bows, while Blank Viverde's Empire had a beautiful combined arms force with a legendary General of the Empire on foot. The Tomb Kings couldn't stand against the might of the Empire's guns and halberds. Guns in particular paid absolute dividends. With General Eisenbart now down 2 in the series, can he bring it back? Tune in tomorrow to find out. That's it for me for today, folks. Hopefully you all enjoyed. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.